Hey, Kristine, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you doing?
Excellent. All right. So I feel like the theme of this week has been micromanagers,
Oh, me too.
right? Two different coaching calls I've had. We've talked about micromanaging. Um, it just, I don't know. It's out there.
It
So
is.
today I would love to hear what are your signs that you might be a micromanager? Because micromanagers never think they're a micromanager. They all think they're like,
Oh,
you know,
they're all that
the
in a bag
best
of
leader.
chips.
Right. Right. So what's a sign that you might be a micromanager?
Control.
Right. And so I think of control. I think of things like I insist my staff meet with me twice a day.
Yes. I
I what
and
else? Yeah, like what other
Should
like
be
control things do you
the
see?
yes and I am going to say this came up yesterday in a coaching call, a manager that insists on coming with you to client meetings.
Oh, yes.
Good one, hey?
Mhm. That's a good one. Um, I think of I had a manager years ago who would ask me to produce all these reports and then never ever read them.
Oh, that's awesome. I had one of
Unless
those
we
too.
were, like, live in a meeting, like and we'd sit in the meeting and she'd ask me questions and I'm like, "Why did the hell did I write up the whole report? You just could have asked me."
Yeah, I know. Okay. So, what else are signs of a controlling person?
Or a micromanager.
Or
That's
sorry,
right.
control yeah, controlling person. I'm just going right I'm going right to the human. My apologies, listeners. We'll just
Well, I
focus
think
on
I think
leaders here.
sometimes well, I would say too, I think sometimes micromanagers are micromanagers because they don't trust people. So
There
they may not
is. That's
right?
that's
There's a
exactly what came
big
up.
part of it.
Yep,
Yep.
absolutely. That's exactly what I named yesterday with my client is that there was no trust. And it was interesting when I flipped it around and asked her to describe what needed to be in place for her to feel trust and vice versa. It's even more what do you need in order to trust somebody else too, so it's that two-way street. But I completely agree, a micromanager, definitely a lack of trust. I'm reflecting back on individuals that I've worked with who, yes, in yesterday's conversation, this leader, so my client went out of the office for 2 days sick last week. And there was no communication around how can I support? Is there anything that needs to be done while you're off, focusing on you, getting better, getting the rest that you need? This micromanager, which we ended up landing on, just jumped in and did her job. And she
Ooh.
was, yeah, exactly, without communicating, without asking. And she said to me, Kristine, the things that got done, there was no sense of urgency. It was okay that they waited 2 days for me to return back to the office.
So interesting because I bet that if you asked that manager, they would have said, "I was just trying to be helpful. Christine's
That,
out sick today. I'm gonna do her
yes,
job so she doesn't have to come back to it." Right? And so it as in so many things, it comes down to poor communication, right? Like, are
exactly,
you communicating it?
exactly. And just that simple asking.
Right.
The open-ended questions. How can I help? What do you need? I want to make sure you have what you need in terms of getting better, the rest, don't worry. Because you and I have both gone out sick. And what do? We lay in bed trying to get better and trying to give our mind, body, and souls what it needs. And yet the wheels are turning on all of the things that
Or
might
no,
need.
let's be clear, we're sitting there with the laptop on our
Okay,
lap
you're
and we're
right.
doing the work, right?
Called
Right?
out. You're right. Or
Right?
we didn't take the sick day. Let's just
Right.
we'll call us both out on that.
Right. And I will say, right, as I've gotten older, I've gotten a lot better with
Me
that,
too.
and I realize, right, that I don't need to be there all the time.
No, no. It's
Well,
that just that simple litmus test of if I don't do this right now, is the company going to go out of business? There you go. Then you can either ask for the help or you can just park it
right.
until you're feeling better.
It can wait till tomorrow, folks. It can wait till tomorrow. All right. Well, thanks. Let's jump into our episode.
Here we go.
Hey, Kristine, remember when you were a kid and you thought that your career was going to be this like perfect straight line trajectory?
Oh my, yes. That is not at all what happened. It ended up being way more of a squiggle than I could have ever imagined. And I am so happy that I embraced all of the squiggles along the way.
Welcome back to Embrace the Squiggle, where we uncover the hidden gems of career transformation, one unfiltered squiggly adventure at a time. We are Colleen.
And Kristine.
And we are here with Patrika Alis Cheston today. Welcome, Patrika. We're so excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we were excited. You were somebody who found our podcast and raised your hand to be on it. So we always love when that happens. And so we are going to jump right in today. So our first question is always, what did little Patrika think she was going to be when she was a kid, right? What did little you think?
Yeah, so I have to say my squiggle started early because as a child, I was interested in a lot of things. I primarily wanted to be a teacher because I loved school so much. But then I was also very interested in the government. So I thought maybe I'd be a senator or even president one day. That didn't happen. But yeah, that
Still
was
time. Plenty of
yes,
time for that to go into
very
place.
true. But yep, that was my goal as an early kid. I really wanted to be a teacher.
And so eventually you get through high school. Like, what did you think you were going to do then? Like, did you go off to college? What were your thoughts at that point?
Yep, I did. My actual goal when I went to college was to become a news anchor. I really love information. And I think part of, learning about being a teacher and also learning about all the way that our country works, I became very interested in news broadcasting. So I went to school at Pace University for journalism and communications. So I ended up focusing on media communications there and really loved it. I got to intern with MSNBC and some other organizations.
Wow.
And actually, that's where I realized that news broadcasting wasn't for me because of the demanding schedule. I worked overnight shifts as an intern, and it was quite a tough schedule. And I realized it just wasn't a good fit for the long run. So I really wanted to still be involved in that kind of information and learning about ways to get messages across. So that's what led me to, by the end of my college career, shift to marketing. So I didn't actually study marketing, but I became a marketing intern at a small startup and then fell in love with it there. And that started my actual career later on.
I love that you're able to, look out for those internships because those broadcasting internships are really hard to get.
They
They are so competitive. So kudos to you for landing one of those. And, this is why they're so important, right? Because you do it and then you're like, oh, wait, that is not at all, right? Like I see people on TV and think that's what broadcasting is. And you realize they've been there for 8 hours overnight, right? To do the 4 a.m. shift or something.
Exactly.
And I always say, like, these are the things we don't know about careers until either we really talk to people who've had them or we try them. So,
very true. Yes.
There's power in trying before you buy, so to speak.
100% agree. Yes. Internships are so valuable.
They are. Yeah, absolutely.
And that whole, right, figuring out what you don't want to do, I think at any age, right, be it at 20 or 50, as you're trying to change careers, to get that list going of like, this is what I don't want to do now. It makes it so much easier to then figure out what you do want to do.
Yes, definitely. And it helps you identify those elements where you might like one aspect of a position, but you realize that, for me, it was the overnight shifts, knowing that if I wanted to be on a morning show, it was not going to be waking up at 8 a.m. It was going to be getting to the office at 3 a.m. And while I liked still being able to present and being on camera and things like that, I learned that that type of lifestyle wasn't the right fit for me. So it helped shape what I actually wanted to do. So I completely agree.
Yeah, I love it. And there's so many, you just touched upon the things that you love to do. And yet what I'm hearing is that you were able to find a career and a pathway that you were still able to do those things just differently.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So from there, right, you graduate college and What's your first like grown up job? I always think like, what's the first job where you got your own health insurance? So
Yeah. So I started out at a wedding videography company that was actually based in Japan, but had a small New York office. So it was a women led organization, which was a really great first experience, I have to say. It was a small group of women that were working together as we basically expanded this business in the US. And I wasn't super into weddings when I first started at the position, but I learned so much about the industry as a whole. I learned about cinematography. I learned about composition for blog posts and different types of social media marketing. So it was an opportunity to really expand my knowledge across so many different horizons. And it allowed me to kind of learn what kind of work environment I liked because I really thought that I wanted to climb the corporate ladder. I saw myself as someone who would be in the C-level, working my way through all the way up to the CMO position. And I did eventually try that path. I did not like it, but spoiler alert there. But that startup environment was something that really resonated with me from the beginning. And it showed me what kind of environment I wanted to be in, one that was supportive, one that was understanding, and one that was progressive enough to basically help people have the wedding of their dreams, but also it helped me identify that I was comfortable working with people who supported each other. And I thought that was a really amazing work environment to be in. And I still look back so fondly upon that job. It was just such a wonderful time to be in that room full of women working hard, basically pursuing growth for a company and achieving amazing things.
So love to jump in here in terms of your time in startup. What I'm hearing, and you can say yes or no, is your values were coming to life. Yeah. I just had this conversation with a client yesterday and it was hilarious. It's our second conversation and we had a massive breakthrough, a massive aha moment. And she says to me, my company didn't hire you to help me figure out that this is not the right place for me to be. And I was like, I know, Colleen's laughing. I love it. And I was like, it's okay. Like, this is okay. Anyways, not to go into that whole thing, but it's what I'm hearing is almost somewhat of a similarity. And I want to bring values forward because when they are compromised, it creates so much havoc in our lives, not just our professional life, our personal life, and our loss of, we become disconnected, we lose our authenticity, we get spicy. I mean, my list goes on. So bringing it back to you, do you remember the moment where you sort of sat up and you said, hey, no more, like this is not in alignment with my values? And my follow-up question, I'll just put on the table right out of the gate, is what values did you identify as being compromised?
That's a great question. And I do remember the moment where I realized it wasn't a good fit for me anymore. I was working at an international conference company. This was after my first startup job. I decided that I wanted to go ahead and pursue the climbing the corporate ladder. I said that was what I wanted to do. I always envisioned myself wearing a suit to the office and everything. So that was what I decided to do. I took a marketing manager position there, and I was just 22 years old. So it was it was a big feat, but I was really excited. And from the beginning, it was a very intense environment, which I expected. I had seen the movies and the TV shows knowing, okay, I'm going to be in corporate. It's going to be intense. There are going to be really scary meetings and things like that. But the thing was, there were basically, that was all it was in that environment. So I was running events and I was basically having to create marketing campaigns for the events. And we would have these meetings where basically if the event wasn't getting to its expected performance levels, if we didn't have enough delegates booked or things like that, we would have this meeting where the goal was to figure out who you could blame, essentially. And I was very uncomfortable with the concept, of course, at first when we kind of set up our first meeting. But then as it went on, it was like, okay, I'm starting to realize, all right, I have to figure out who I can blame because I'm going to get yelled at or I'm going to be the one that's in trouble if the event is not reaching its numbers. And I realized that's just not who I am. I am a collaborator. I am someone who, if something's not going right, even if it's not my fault, even if it is my fault, I'm going to sit down and say, how can we fix this together? Because if we're all working towards the same goal, let's all work on it. I don't want to blame, someone on the other team or anything like that just to say, oh, well, this is your fault. You're the one that needs to fix it. We're all working towards a common goal. And I am very much into treating projects as something that is a collective effort, and taking that energy and pushing it towards success versus pushing it towards identifying who's the problem, because I don't think that that's an effective way to work. And I remember speaking to my manager and saying, I'm just really stressed about this. And in one meeting, I literally broke down crying because I was so stressed about everything that was happening. We had multiple events at a time, and I was juggling all of these, and some weren't performing. And I'm being told I have to find somebody to blame so that I don't get in trouble with upper management. And when I cried, my manager looked at me with almost a level of satisfaction, okay, now you're really here. You're crying. Everybody cries at work. That's what's supposed to happen. And that day I started looking for a new position, because I realized, even if this is supposed to be the corporate ladder, even if this is the environment that everyone thinks is okay, it doesn't match with what I believe. And I am not going to be someone who climbs up to further perpetuate this. I don't think people should be crying at work out of sadness and fear and stress. I understand work is going to be stressful from time to time, but I'm never going to be the one that is pushing someone down so hard that they're going to cry. And
it sounds like your boss almost felt satisfied, satisfaction in the fact that you were crying. Exactly. Who wants to work for somebody who is happy about the fact that you're miserable?
Exactly. And I just knew that's not a good fit. That's not okay. Nothing about this is okay.
No. And it takes so much courage to stand up and make that choice to walk away. And so many people stay. I get, Colleen and I have had a million conversations, in terms of leadership and et cetera. But, and I understand we have commitments, and life is hard these days. And yet we still need to be true to ourselves, and we still need to be surrounded by people that are going to lift us up and not drag us down. And it takes a lot of courage to stand up and say, this isn't working. Values are misaligned, and I do need to go off and find something else. And, Colleen instigated quite a rich conversation on LinkedIn yesterday or the day before, in terms of, it had to do with hybrid versus working at home. And, there still is that command and control style of leadership that exists out there. And it's I know Colleen and I do, we're doing as much as we can to hopefully, be a part of the movement for leaders to look at their teams or their organizations through the lens of, we're all just humans doing the best that we can.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that piece of your story, because I know that we have many listeners that can absolutely relate and could very well be going through something that is just as challenging in their own careers. So thank you for that.
Oh, of course. It's so important.
So you made that decision. And did you squiggle? Tell us what came next.
I did. I squiggled right back to startups, and I started working for an international startup that was based in Paris at the time. So that was a big adventure for me, because I immediately had to, once I picked up that position, they wanted me to fly to Paris to train for the position. Yeah.
Twist my arm. You want me to go to Paris?
That was, something that kind of swayed me to say yes for the position. But it was, I was very nervous because I had not been to Europe. I was, I really liked to travel, but I just hadn't had the opportunity to do that much internationally at that point. And going to a country where, I speak a little bit of French, enough to get around, but it was pretty intimidating to, basically pack up my bags and go across the ocean to a new position. And it wasn't just for vacation, it was, to go work in an entirely new environment in an entirely new country. But it was a great adventure. I had an amazing time getting started there. But the position actually was primarily in the U.S., so I was basically working to bring this French brand over to the US. So I got to work again in a very small office with a lot of local people who were basically working together towards that same goal. And we had a great time being able to work together. And I realized that I really liked the environment where, they call it the scrappy startup for a reason. There are, you're wearing a lot of hats, you're doing a lot of late hours. You're doing some stuff that's, a bit unconventional for the typical job, but it was just so much fun to be able to have that energy and share that energy with the people that I was working with. And that's what led me to really get excited about international travel, which I started doing kind of on my own, and being able to take those opportunities to kind of extend my work trips. When I had to go to Paris, I was able to kind of, add on to the end of the trip and go to Barcelona and go to some different places and just get to
So
experience
smart, right?
Yeah. Especially
I
when
always,
the company. Yeah, sorry, Colleen.
I was going to say thing, right? Especially when at least the company's paying your airfare. Like
Yes.
I always try to extend all of my business trips
Exactly.
when I'm
I
in a
did
new
the same.
place, right? So you can check it
Yeah.
out and see things.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And I think that falls
absolutely.
into taking care of yourself. It's a way of saying, I'm
yes.
working hard. I'm going to an unfamiliar environment, but I'm also going to do something that is really enriching for me. And my time in Barcelona was one of my favorite trips of all time. Like I had so much fun getting to just enjoy myself and get to explore on my own. And like you said, that flight being paid for made a big difference.
Well, and it's a reminder that personal and professional do not run parallel. That,
Exactly. Yes.
it's our professional and our personal lives are so intertwined, and this is an opportunity to leverage some personal time and
Yes.
and weave it into being away from family or overseas. Or I know there's a couple of trips that I took that I actually wish I had extended.
Mm-hmm.
But in the moment, there was a lot going on back at home, and I just sort of felt the pull that I needed to go do my work and then come back. But in hindsight, it probably would have been good for my soul to have extended a couple of vacations, though I did do it on other trips. So, what in that chapter did you learn about yourself? Because it sounds like you took a position with an international company that shifted you outside of your comfort zone, sort of opened up this door or this window to a different type of life. And so what was it that you learned about yourself in that moment when you started doing all of this travel? And
yeah, it was. I learned that I loved solo travel. That was one of the biggest revelations for me. I was used to traveling with my family. I grew up traveling quite a bit. My dad traveled for work quite a bit, so my mom and I would just like tag along with him. And then when my sisters came along, we all just tagged along. So I went on a million road trips growing up, but going to Paris was my first time really taking a major solo trip, and I learned that I was okay. I was the type of person who could identify where I needed to be in an environment. I could try new restaurants and go sit in a restaurant by myself. I could, look at a map and try to figure out where I should go, find something to explore. And that was really something that taught me about my own sense of bravery. I did not consider myself necessarily to be a super brave person growing up. I was more on the shy side. I was very, very academically smart and wanted to always, answer the questions in class. But when it came to, diving in and doing something that I was unsure about, I was definitely the type of person to shy away from those things. But taking that solo trip really helped me to step into a new era of myself, basically to learn that I could take those steps. I could go where things were scary. I could try things that were uncomfortable and different. And I would be okay because I came back on the flight in one piece. I was all right. Everything was fine, and I was better for having that experience. And another thing that I learned from that position itself was that I learned how to advocate for myself professionally in a way that I hadn't before. There was
Nice.
an opportunity. Yes,
Right?
there was
Such
an
a
opportunity
skill.
for me to speak at an event, and this was something that I had not done but always wanted to do. I loved being in front of people. I was a theater kid. I loved doing performances and things like that, but I hadn't made the transition into speaking professionally. And I was pretty junior in the company, but there was an opportunity for someone to present at a conference that was marketing focused. And I was the only marketing person in the US. So I said that I wanted to do it. And there were multiple people who were like, oh, we could fly someone over to speak or something like that. And I said, well, I know I can do it. I will put together my presentation. I can speak at this event. And I ended up speaking, and it went over extremely well. The CEO of the company congratulated me on the talk. I mean, there was so much positive feedback, and it really ignited that love for professional speaking in me, and really launched a second part of my career, which was so exciting. So, being able to say that, I'm not going to let you talk me out of the thing that I want to do, because
Yeah.
this is a
Oh my
benefit for me
goodness.
and it's a benefit for the company. So
Mic drop.
I
making
love
that
it.
step.
Yeah. And I
Mic
think,
drop. I love that.
well, and I think in both these examples, I was talking recently with doing a keynote around risk taking, right? And that
Mhm.
so many people are so afraid to take those risks. And
Yeah.
the
Yes.
only way you get better at taking risks is by taking risks
Taking
and like
risks.
building that
Yes.
risk muscle. And so, sometimes I tell folks, sometimes they have to be baby risks. Like it has to feel like small and not important. But the more you do those things, right, the bigger you build that muscle to where you're like, I can do this, right? I own this. I can travel by myself. And so those two experiences launched what you're doing now. So why don't you tell us a little bit
Exactly.
about like what you're doing now, and we can kind of jump into that piece.
Yeah. So now I run two companies, and it's a marketing agency that specializes in experiential events for different startups, as well as full service campaigns. So the company is called Roundology. And that is basically, that's basically my baby. I've worked for that for a long time and taken all of the skills that I've learned throughout the years to run this, to kind of put it all into one big bundle. That I work with all these different startups who are looking for services, and they're looking for someone who understands the marketing from end to end, because as a startup, it's just so confusing trying to pull together all of these things. Do I need to be at conferences? Do I need to be running social media campaigns? What am I supposed to be doing to get my message out there? And that's what my agency does. We basically take you through all of the rounds of being a startup, from the seed round all the way to, a Series D and beyond. And the other organization that I run is called Outsource SDR, and it's a sales focused organization that actually helps organizations basically find leads and close deals. So it's all about kind of that second step after you've done your marketing and people know about you. How are you getting those leads in, and how are you converting them? So the Outsource SDR initiative is relatively new, but I kept getting people asking me about, how do I, do you have connections to sales organizations, or how do we get the sales going? Because you can generate marketing leads, but what are you going to do with them? So
Right.
it's a combination of marketing and sales.
I love it. I'm actually in a business accelerator right now, and the speaker
Nice.
on Monday spent pretty much almost the entire 3 hours talking about the big differences between marketing, advertising, and sales. And that,
Yes.
right, they are three different lanes. And if you don't master all three, nothing works, right? Like they are
Exactly.
completely different. And I think many people, and particularly startups, right? If you're a startup, I think of Kristine, one of our guests. Nancy who worked for Roomba
Oh,
or
Roomba.
iRobot.
Oh, that's
Yes.
Right.
cool.
So when you think of like it was actually one of my favorite podcasts because in it she let it out that Roomba, she was brought in as a marketing person, right? And Roomba was
Mhm.
supposed to be called I Suck because that's what the engineers thought would be a good name for it, right? And
Oh
you
my
think
goodness, that's
about,
hilarious.
right? Isn't that literally, we were like tears down our face. We were crying, laughing so hard when she said that. But I think of how important it is. And most startups, you're not hiring a marketing person, an advertising person, a salesperson when you're a team of 5,
Yeah.
Right.
right? So I would love to know too, like, what is it about the startups? Like you talked about them being scrappy and stuff that you found your home in them. Like, what is the stuff that like really excites you about the startup community?
Yeah, so I think you get to see a lot of wins quickly, which is very helpful for me. I'm the type of person that loves to celebrate those little moments. I will celebrate when my grilled cheese sandwich is done cooking. And I find in startups that there's so much ability to do that because in the corporate environment, a lot of times it's like, you might achieve something that seems to be great, like, oh, I just closed a $100,000 deal. Okay, well, Tom next to you just closed a $2 million deal. So what are you going to do? And there's just so many times where you kind of get put down because the accomplishments aren't enough. But in startups, every win is a win. Every step that you're taking is towards that goal of whether you're trying to go public or whether you're trying to just raise that next round of funding or even just get your first client. There are just so many steps in the beginning where people aren't really jaded as much as they are in corporate environments. And, I understand corporate environments have to exist for a reason. But I think in startups, you find that area where you can really get to enjoy those moments. And there are people around you that also want to enjoy those moments.
Well, and that's the thing, like startups, tech, I mean, if there's just such a vibrancy, yes, it can be 100%
Exactly.
grueling.
Mhm.
I do not take that away or sugarcoat it. And yet, startup tech attract these vibrant, innovative, creative, thoughtful risk takers,
Fast
Yes.
movers,
fast
right?
movers, shakers. And, two things come to mind. Number one, I don't know if you saw in the news yesterday, the company called Wiz that's been almost acquired by Google for 32 billion caught my attention. I went down the rabbit hole out of curiosity to find out, that the co-founder graduated in 2005, 2012 with a master's, started this tech company in a pandemic and sold it 5 years later for $32 billion. Woman in Vancouver. I know. I was just like, how amazing. Woman in Vancouver here that I coached years ago when my role in higher ed, started a tech company and is just sold to Deloitte. And Deloitte has
Wow.
absorbed her entire team. So business as usual under the
Yep.
umbrella of Deloitte. And just, I mean, it's not for everybody. And
Of
yet
course.
it can just be a wild ride that will change your life because of the ebbs and the flows and just even what all goes into a startup. You've named a
Mhm.
couple of things which I won't repeat, but all of those are just, you know,
Yeah.
wild rides in itself. So
Very much.
and I love that you are now taking that expertise. You've created your own thing and you're able to support more than just one company with your expertise. And to Colleen's point, yeah, you start up a company, I mean, it takes a lot to be able to start to bring people on and their areas of expertise. And I'll do the
Mhm.
Gallup shout out today. We all have our strengths and we may or may not be able to bring those people on that have the strengths that we need to drive it to the next level. So it sounds like you're really servicing a niche that can help these companies take flight.
Yes. Totally agree. And it's one thing that you just said reminded me of one of the other benefits of startups is that you get to have experience that you wouldn't get to have in a larger organization.
Yeah.
As a
So
young
true.
marketing manager, I was, getting to plan events and campaigns that normally I would not touch if I was just a marketing assistant, 15
Yeah.
rungs down the ladder. So there's a lot of benefit in getting to have those experiences and getting to step into those places where you wouldn't necessarily be invited, especially as someone who was younger coming up through the field.
Well, and knowing how many, I'm getting I'm speaking in metaphor terms here, but knowing how many balls you can hold in the air, because startup, there are a lot of balls. And if
Mhm.
your internal operating system is only one or two, then maybe something more structured and more corporate and more established is a better fit. But if
Yes.
you're one that can hold multiple balls in the air, then yes, absolutely. It's a great place to get experience. I'm just curious. I did a little research on you before we jumped on our podcast today.
Okay.
Have you done something with the travel piece?
I have actually.
Yeah, maybe we could just touch upon that to kind of close the circle, because
Yeah.
it sounds to me
So,
like
yeah,
you turned a
absolutely.
passion into something.
I did, yes. So travel, of course, like I mentioned, I started doing the solo traveling. And then I realized that there was an opportunity for people to kind of join my journey. A lot of people would ask me, how do you do this? How do you go out by yourself? How do you sit in a restaurant by yourself? How do you plan a trip by yourself? And I realized that there was a lot of people who wanted to do it but were afraid to do it. So I started sharing. I started sharing that information on Instagram. I started basically just telling my story about how I learned how to travel on my own. And then I also started sharing how I really like to travel to off the beaten path locations. As someone who grew up on these road trips, some of my fondest memories were, a small restaurant that was in a town in the middle of nowhere versus just going to New York City and just going to, the different, major locations that people are always trying to get to. I found that those small cities and off the beaten path locations were just super interesting, and you got to see a level of culture that you didn't really get to experience in the tourist focused towns.
Love that.
So I've been doing quite a bit of work in the sustainability and tourism space with smaller cities and smaller organizations that are trying to attract travelers. And I focus on responsible traveling and conscious traveling, where you're contributing to the local environment and you're also highlighting locations that are welcoming to people of all walks of life, which I think is really important. And I'm working on some projects in that area to basically make these locations more accessible to people so that people can find out about them. Because a lot of these smaller locations, like, for example, I went on a road trip through the Midwest. So I went to Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, all in one road trip. Basically, flew into Tulsa, flew out of Tulsa, but did a little circle through them during the week that I was there. And so many of these small towns, they don't have a lot of tourism budget, but they are incredible experiences with lots of history and lots of information and experiences. So getting to work with those tourism boards and then helping them get connected with travelers that are looking for destinations like that is my kind of pet project right now that I'm planning to continue working on, and getting people connected to these destinations. It's just so much fun.
I love it.
I love it. I love Airbnb and like immersing myself right in the
Yes,
culture and pretending I live in that city. I love it.
it's an incredible way to travel.
Right. And
Yeah.
finding those off the beaten path cities
Yeah.
and locations, right? Because if you're just staying to the main tourist attractions or the main parts of any city, you're never going to actually see what it's like to live there, right? It's
Exactly.
completely different to start to see what do people who live here actually experience as opposed to what do tourists who visit here once in their lifetime experience.
Yes, completely
No.
agree.
I drove from Vancouver to Missoula, Montana in November.
Whoa, that's
I know.
amazing.
I had no idea like what I was going to embark on, but what a beautiful part of your country, first of all. And I went through Coeur d'Alene and then dropped into Missoula. What a gorgeous part of your country. Had no idea what I was going to embark on. And believe it or not, Missoula has some amazing restaurants.
Oh, that's awesome. I have to add it to my list. I haven't been.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the wildlife, like deer on the downtown street at a stoplight. And then the deer, I was just like, I'm dying. Like, I'm dying here. Like, this is such an experience. Anyways, there you go. There's my Montana experience. But I would go back. I would go back in a heartbeat. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And that's something that's actually going to stick with you versus just, nothing against Times Square, but everybody, thinks you have to go to Times Square if you're going to New York. But what about like upstate New York? Absolutely gorgeous. The mountains, just the nature experience. And people are missing out on those things. So I want to highlight it, which is I'm completely on board. I need to get to Montana. I haven't been there yet, but it's on my list.
Go to Montana. And just as we move to close off our conversation today, I will just add that it was a solo trip too.
Yes, I love it. That's amazing.
There we go. All right. Well, this is an amazing conversation. If you had to leave our listeners with some words of your wisdom, what would you like them to know?
I think I would let them know that fear is not something to be afraid of. I think that a lot of times we say, oh, that thing is scary, so we decide not to do it. But I think you say, hey, that thing is scary. I'm going to try it anyway. You would be surprised how far that can take you, whether it's career-wise, whether it's personal, whether it's a combination of both. Embracing the fear and doing it anyway is something that will really get you through the challenging parts of all of life. And I think that is what, when we talk about embracing the squiggle, I think the squiggle can be scary. And I think that taking that time to actually just say, I'm going to do it. It's going to be squiggly. It's not going to be a straight path, but it's going to be worth it in the end because I'm going to have done something for myself. And even if it doesn't work out, I've learned something along the way. So I think not being afraid of your fear is the biggest thing that has made a large difference in my life and what I love to share with others.
Oh, I love it. Those are great words of wisdom. Can we put those in our journal? One of those quotes?
Yes, we will definitely be pulling one of those.
I think there's some great words of wisdom. Thank you. Thank you, Patrika.
Thank you.
Colleen, who's taking us home today?
Sure, I can take us home.
Okay, awesome.
I feel like we were talking about this topic. So what is your favorite place on earth? Like all the places you travel to, what's been your favorite?
I would have to say, I'm going to go with Barcelona because it is a musical city with amazing food, and the getting to see everyone out on the streets at 10 p.m. going to dinner was such an interesting experience. I'm a bit of a night owl myself, so I fit in just very well there. And there was people singing opera on the streets, which was a wonderful experience as well for me. I just love music. So in order to be able to have great music and good food and beautiful architecture, I was very happy there. So I'd say that's been my favorite destination so far, but open to exploring.
Nice. I have to add Barcelona to my to be traveled list.
I've been there. It's vibrant.
So what are you binging or streaming on TV right now?
Oh my goodness. I am watching Severance and the finale is on Friday.
So good. So good.
Really?
Yes, it's an amazing
Where do we watch
show.
that? What's that on?
It's on Apple TV Plus.
Oh, okay. I don't have Apple. Yes. Maybe I'll see if I can get a
free trial.
Yeah.
Maybe a free trial.
And binge it. So totally worth it. So good.
Okay. So good.
All right. So what's your favorite color, right? Like what's the color that brings you the most joy?
Yeah. So this is oddly specific, but I always say my favorite color is rose gold. I think it's the color of the sunset, and it always makes for great pictures too. So I'm always wearing some shade of pink.
Nice. All right. If you had to get a tattoo, what would it be?
Ooh. I have thought about this so many times and I never have a straightforward answer. I think it would be some type of flower, but I don't know which flower because I'm too indecisive about that. I just really like flowers.
Excellent. All right. And our last one here is, so what book recommendation do you have for our listeners? Fiction,
Ooh.
nonfiction? Like, what's something you've loved that you've read?
Okay, so fiction, I love anything. I love Emily Henry and Abby Jimenez. Those are two authors that they're more in like the romance field, but those are my like go-to fiction books for when I just need something to listen to. I love audiobooks mostly.
Ooh, me too.
And then I'd say for nonfiction, I really enjoyed Shonda Rhimes' Year of Yes. That book was
Yes.
just wonderful. I got to see her speak live, and I read her book, and it just really meant a lot to me to learn how to say yes to things instead of just shying away from things. So I think it ties in a lot.
That is a great book. I'll have to go back and read that. It's been a while since I read that. I think I have it on a bookshelf somewhere, but I
I haven't
remember
read it yet.
loving it. Oh, so good. So
It's
good.
really
I'm
good.
pretty good at saying yes. It's no
Okay.
that I've had to learn late
Yeah.
in my life.
Well, but I will say, like, her take on it was just really interesting to like hear her story about her year of saying
Mhm.
yes.
Okay.
So
I'll put that on my list.
excellent.
We know how you like
Well,
it.
thank you so
I
much
will.
for being our guest today, Patrika. Where can our guests follow you? So I know you talked about sharing your travel stuff on Instagram. Where can they find you? We'll put it in the show notes, but let us know too.
So my Instagram is at Patrika Elise, and that's basically where you'll find all of my content. That's where I share, day-to-day information about what I'm doing across working as well as my personal life. So that's the best place to find me. And you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. So I'm usually on LinkedIn, Patrika Alis Cheston, and those are the best places to reach me.
Fantastic. Yes, we will link those in the show notes so everyone can follow you.
Thank
And
you.
don't forget, folks, you can follow Embrace the Squiggle on Instagram and TikTok, which is where we post all of our information. And we love seeing your reviews on Apple and Spotify. Well, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you can just give us a star rating. But on Apple, all the reviews have been great. So keep them coming. They really excite us when we see them. This week's Embrace the Squiggle was brought to you by Kristine Thody, Coaching and Consulting, offering executive and leadership coaching, career and operational consulting, all rooted in authenticity. And of course, our fabulous Lily Paxton, who produces us every week. So thank you so much, Patrika. It was so great meeting you. This has been fabulous.
Thank you both. It's been wonderful having a conversation with you.
Awesome conversation. Thanks so much.
Is it time for you to add a little squiggle to your career? Join us every week to hear from another guest talk about how they embrace the squiggle.
Subscribe now and find your inspiration.